How's it going, everyone, and welcome to Bluestream Reporting. In this video, I wanted to address some of the executive orders that Joe Biden says he's going to sign once he becomes president on January 20th. And a lot of it has to do with Joe Biden sort of reversing the Trump agenda. And I wanted to also address the difference between an executive order and an executive action, because they're not the same. Even though some places might talk about them as being the same thing, they're not the same. Now, it's important to remember that an executive order is not new legislation. The president can't pass any new laws by himself. He needs the power of Congress to do that. So the president can basically only use existing laws or existing policies to enact his executive orders. The reason a president signs an executive order is to use their power as the executive branch of government to direct the federal government on how to act in specific situations. That's basically executive orders and actions in a nutshell. Now let's go into the difference between an executive order and an executive action. The biggest difference is that executive orders are legally binding. They're published in the Federal Register and they can be legally challenged. One of the examples of an executive order is Trump's $300 federal unemployment extension. That was when the federal unemployment extension ran out. That was from Congress. It was $600. And President Trump needed a way to get more money to the people. And the way he did that was through an executive order. He redirected funds from FEMA into the federal unemployment extension. He didn't use any money that wasn't already available to use. And that's the most important part of that. Because if he needed more money, he would have had to have gone through Congress. So what he did was use an executive order to redirect funds and not create new funds. Now, executive actions, they're a little bit less powerful. They are not legally binding. They are not published in the Federal Register. And they're more of a signaling device to federal agencies on how to behave. So, for example, implementing a national COVID-19 testing strategy. That's something that a president can do. He can tell federal agencies that, hey, this is how we're going to handle COVID-19 testing. Also, it's some of the Defense Production Act. That's where the federal government works with companies in order to produce what is needed during a crisis, whether it be war or right now during a global pandemic, by making PPE. So that's a little bit about executive orders and executive actions. What I want to focus on in this video is executive orders and what Joe Biden says he's going to do, because there's a lot of places talking about executive orders and executive actions like they're the same thing, but I want to talk about executive orders, the things that are legally binding that Joe Biden says he's going to do urgently. And the best article I found is from Forbes, and there's really only 5 things that Joe Biden wants to get done immediately through executive orders. Here we are on Forbes. This is an article on the 5 executive orders that Joe Biden is expected to pass. The number 1 is the Paris Climate Accord. Biden wants the U.S. to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, build on Obama's efforts to fight climate change, and introduce a $2 trillion clean energy and infrastructure spending bill. I should also note that that's not the Green New Deal that has been talked about a lot. It's something different. And Biden wants zero emissions by 2050. Number 2, he wants the World Health Organization. He wants the U.S. to rejoin the World Health Organization and create a coronavirus task force to address the COVID-19 pandemic. And he wants the U.S. to remain a global health leader within the World Health Organization. Number 3, he wants to reverse Trump's travel ban on Muslim countries. These would include countries like Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. And eventually, and North Korea and Venezuela. Number 4, Biden wants to reinstate the Dreamers program, which allows children of undocumented immigrants to remain in the U.S. Once again, that's a reversal of the Trump administration's ban on the Dreamers program. And it would ensure that the DACA program, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, would continue to allow these immigrants to live and work in the U.S. without threat of being deported. And number 5, Biden wants to repeal the transgender military ban that was instated in 2017, and that would also undo Trump's policy. And that would allow transgender individuals to serve openly in the U.S. military. So that is sort of the 5 most urgent things that Joe Biden wants to enact through executive orders. These are legally binding things that Joe Biden wants to do. I should mention that some of the things that aren't mentioned in this article that might be instated by the Joe Biden administration is the Iran nuclear deal, something with student loans, and of course, the financial stimulus, which would heavily depend on who's in power for the Senate, or who holds the majority in the Senate. If the Senate is controlled by Democrats, then you can expect less financial stimulus through executive orders. If the Senate is majority controlled by the Republicans, you can expect that Joe Biden will want to provide more stimulus through executive orders. And we will stay tuned to see how he's going to do that. But for now, that's all I wanted to say on Joe Biden's executive orders. If you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.